Me. Okay, everyone. I'm glad y'all can join me. All right. So what I got going on here today, guys? I'm doing a compliance audit, also doing a risk assessment. Okay. Doing it from the Nist 853 framework. Okay. Shout out to Jared Auger, man. Took his course, taught me a lot about this. Okay. So let me show you what I got going on here, guys. All right. So this is the Nist 853 security framework. All right. It's a lot of different ones. SOC 2, Nist. Okay. What is it? ISO 0027, something like that. All right. So the controls that I'm going to be auditing, guys, I'm not going to do a whole entire risk assessment. Okay, guys, if I did a whole entire risk assessment, it'd probably take up a few videos, man. Okay. So what I'm going to do is just audit a particular section of the NIST 853 framework. Okay. So you can see, all right, exactly how a compliance audit and a risk assessment after the audit goes. All right. So the session that I decided to audit for this particular company, guys, is it's talking about least privilege. All right, access control, least privilege. Okay, all right. Um, I like dealing a lot with identity and access management. Okay, and that is a control that I was really interested in, and wanted to see how a CISO or a IT manager would answer to questions pertaining to least privilege. Okay, so here's the framework. Okay, so as you can see, if you scroll down to the bottom of the framework, guys, all right, I did AC6, access control 6. So I did AC6 all the way to AC610. Okay, so these are the controls that I'm going to ask this business if they are compliant with. Okay, if we go right here, it'll zip to it in the document. Least privilege, control, employ the principle of least privilege, allow only authorized access for users, allow only authorized access for users, processes acting on behalf of users that are necessary to accomplish assigned organizational tasks. Okay, so that's what this section of this framework is talking about, guys. Least privilege, making sure that people only have access to the things that they need access to. Okay, so what I did, guys, all right, I pulled a spreadsheet. All right, I got a spreadsheet down from Google. Literally, you type in NIST 853 Excel spreadsheet, and it's available for you to download. Okay, here's a copy of it. So the same document I was just looking at, guys, this is the same exact document in spreadsheet form with all of the controls on it. All right, and the one that I did was it was AC-6. So if I go right here and Control F, it's already searched AC6. We scroll down here to the least privilege control. All right, that has to do with access control. Employ the principles of least privilege. Okay, I'm not going to go through and read all this, guys. When you're doing a compliance audit, guys, you want to try to reword the question. So, I mean, you want to try to reword the control that asks the managers, you know what I'm saying, in a more easy way than what's written on the NIST 853 framework. Because people will get bored with you asking them straight text. Like, you know what I'm saying? Do you limit the number of unsuccessful biometric login attempts? Okay. You can say, do you use, you know what I'm saying? Do you even use biometric login attempts? Okay. If they don't even use that, then their control isn't even relevant to their organization. Okay. So what I did, guys, all right, with the help of GPT-4 and Bing, all right, I created this Word document here, which is pretty much an interview of the CISO of my Make Believe company and the IT manager, Kathy Branch. Okay. And it was an in-person interview. Okay. So I asked them particular questions pertaining to the AC-6 section of the NIST 853 framework. And they gave me answers. All right. Shout out to Chat GPT or GPT-4. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and read through these with you guys and let you know the answers that they gave us. So all of these apply to AC-6. So how does your organization implement least privilege? Also, how do you ensure that users only have access to the minimum level of data and functionality required to complete their assigned tasks? Their answer was, we implement least privilege with our Microsoft Azure AD. We make sure that both normal and normal and admin users only have access to the required resources for that job. So if you they pretty much answer my question right there. Okay, they make sure that they make sure that admins and normal users only have access to the resources that they need. That's leaf privilege. That's exactly what I'm asking for. Okay. The second question. All right. How do you authorize access for special users to organizational defined security functions and organization defined securely relevant information? So how do you authorize your special users who can get to this type of information, security relevant information and security functions? Everybody shouldn't have access to that type of information. Only people in your organization. All right. Only admin users, the IT team, can authorize access to security functions and security related information. So that's good. All right. So only admin users can authorize access. All right, which is the IT team. So is that a risk? It can be, because you know, say if one of the IT person's credentials get stolen, somebody can use their credentials to potentially mess with security information on your network, or Azure in their case. AC6-2. Do you make sure that admin users with access to security functions use non-privileged accounts when accessing non-security functions? Okay, so they said no, we do not. Our admin users always have access to admin privileges. So right there off the bat, we know they're not complying with this. All right, they automatically have, you know, their admin users always have access to those admin privileges. They do not use other accounts when they are trying to mess with security functions. Okay, AC6-3. All right. Does authorized network access have to be established in your organization to access privileged commands? If so, do you document when that type of access takes place? All right. That's AC6-3. All right. So pretty much, do you document when someone has authorized access to your network? All right, to perform privileged commands on your network, okay? To perform admin privilege. Do you authorize that? And they told me yes, authorized network access must be established to access privileged commands. Also, only a super user, the IT manager, can access privileged commands. All user log activity is logged in Azure. So I do know from my experience with Azure, both in real life and in my home labs, that, you know what I'm saying, Azure does have user audit logging. So they probably use the user audit logging to, you know, log what they have going on here. AC6-4. Do you separate your network domains between teams within the organization so that only specific users have access to that data? So this is pretty much talking about, do you make sure that different departments in your organization are on separate networks for confidential information? So it might be, like they said, look at the answer. Yes, we separate our HR, finance, and IT teams networks separate from the rest of our organization for security reasons with Azure VMs. Okay, so they're compliant with that. All right, they're separating their HR material. You don't want your payment material and your just everyday work on the same network. Okay, because if somebody was getting in that network, all right, or somebody got access to that, they could potentially get financial information. You don't want that. You don't want everybody to have access to that. Okay. AC6-5. All right. How do you ensure that privileged accounts are restricted to specific personnel or roles? And how do you tell the difference between allowed local account privileges and allowed admin account privileges? Okay. So their answer to me was from Kathy Johnson and Jason Branch, all right, the CISO and the IT manager of this make-believe company that I interviewed with Chat GPT or GPT-4, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we ensure admin and privileged users are restricted to specific roles with permissions and role assignments. In Azure AD for specific user role-based access controls. Role-based access control, guys, is only people of that type of role. All right, hold on, my phone ringing here. Hold on. Only people of that type of role, guys, can perform certain functions. Okay, role-based access control. All right, that's what they use to make sure that only people are restricted to specific type of information. All right. AC66. I got a few more here, guys. I'm going all the way to 10. Do you prohibit privileged access to non-organizational users? If so, how? Guys, I love Azure. Okay. I talked to ChatGPT, like, talk to me from the perspective of somebody, a business that uses Azure. Okay. Yes, we prohibit privileged access to non-organizational users by using B2B. All right, B2B is business to business. It's a service offered by Azure. When outside users access your network, they can log in as a guest. Okay, so they don't have access to everything people do in the network, but they may have access to certain resources. Okay, they use B2B privileged access management in Azure, which grants outside users a guest account when interacting with other networks. So that's prohibiting privileged access to non-organizational users. If you're not a part of that organization, you have a guest account. So you can't do everything, access security functions and all that. You can't do all that. All right. AC67. Do you periodically review user privileges of users to see if they still need the privileges that they currently have? If access cannot be justified to the privilege, will you revoke access? So what this is dealing with, maybe you have somebody that switched positions in the company. You got somebody from HR and now they on the sales team. Okay. When they were on HR, they should have access to, you know what I'm saying, confidential information, credit card information, you know what I'm saying, bank account information, stuff like that, because HR needs that stuff. Social security numbers. Okay. Sales department don't need that. Okay. So, if somebody was to move from HR department to the sales department, they don't need the same permissions that they had when they were working HR. They need sales permissions. Okay. So yes and yes. All right. So they said they were complying with it. They said they check on that. All right. But when we checked on it, when checking 5 random users, one of those users had admin privileges from a recent position change. So I don't know. So how many more had that same problem? Okay. We only went over 5 of them. So if we were to audit their whole or look through their whole, all the users on their Azure network, we don't know what type of privileges people got. So they need to jump on that. Okay. That's a partial control right there. All right. AC68. Do you make sure that normal users can gain admin privileges for downloads to the devices? Yes. Normal users must have assistance from the IT team to log in as admin to download software from admin's privileges. All right. So pretty much when you trying to download something on your company laptop or whatever, all right, certain things you need access, certain things you need admin privileges to download onto the computer. Okay. What they're telling me right here is the only way that you can download those type of programs is if you have assistance from somebody from the IT team, which is pretty much standard, you know, from what I understand working at IT. Okay. Most of the time when it's something downloaded, you got to log in as an admin to download that. So they are compliant with that. Okay. Do you log and analyze the use of privileged functions in your organization? They have Azure. Okay. Yes. Using Azure activity logs. Okay. While I was there with them, interviewing them, I looked at their activity logs and saw, okay, yeah, they're complying with that. And the last one, do you prevent non-privileged users from executing privileged functions? Yes, non-privileged users can only execute functions for their role. Admin functions are only for admins. Okay, these are all the answers that GPT-4 wrote up for my interview for my compliance audit. All right, back to our again, this is the spreadsheet version of the 853 framework that I pulled online. It's the same one that I was just looking at. Okay. It's the same one as this one right here. Okay. It's just in spreadsheet form. I believe I told you that. Okay. So if you go right here and I type in AC6, all right, this is what I pulled and made my own spreadsheet, guys. I did AC6 to AC610. So I pulled that and made my own. Okay, control identifier, control text, and discussion. All those questions that I asked the IT manager are these same things, just reworded. All right, it's about 10 controls that I audited them on. In real life, you would do the whole thing. All right, right now I'm not going to do that. That would take too long. Okay, so what we record down here, guys, is the data collection, how we collected the data. So some of the things available here is, was it an interview? Did you test it out? Was it a documentation that had the information on it? All right. Evidence detail. All right. So who told you, you know, from your evidence what you need to know? All right. It was a interview with CISO Jason Branch and the IT manager Kathy Johnson. All right. That's who let me know my information. Okay. Then you have what we found. All right. All this is, guys, is the answers that I was reading out from this right here. Because that's what they found. That's what I found from interviewing them. Those are the controls that I found out they were compliant with. And I applied it to this spreadsheet accordingly. Okay. So, remember the first one. They implement least privilege of Microsoft Azure AD with privileged access. That's in place. All right. Then you have these over here, guys. This is your risk assessment. Okay. So the compliance audit. All right. The compliance audit is all this stuff in the blue. The risk assessment is all this stuff to the right. Well, it goes hand in hand, guys, because you can't do a risk assessment without a compliance audit. Because what you're doing is you do the risk assessment and find out the risk, and then depending on the risk, you make the risk assessment, okay, and let them know how severe their risks are. Are they able, or do they want to accept them, or do they want to mitigate those? Okay. So what we got here, all right, that one was in place. So you come into the risk estimation, you'll say that's in place. Okay. And how it works, guys, the likelihood and impact values. All right. So you have to grade it out. All this is pulled from this 853, guys. Okay. And shout out to Jared Auger, because he made a lot of this available to me in this course. Okay. That I pulled this information from. So if you see a likelihood of a threat initiation, you have to grade it from 0, 2, 5, 8, and 10. Likelihood of a threat initiation non-adversarial, that one is adversarial, like a hacker or something. This is just maybe a natural disaster or something like that, non-adversarial. Okay. And what you do, you multiply, all right, whatever number you pick from here, from the impact that it will have. Is it a 0? That means it's not that much of an impact, but it's an impact. 2, it's a little higher of an impact. All right. 5, the threat could be expected to have serious adverse effects on the organization. 8, the threat could even be expected to have a severe or catastrophic adverse effect on organizational operations. And 10, the threat could be expected to have multiple severe or catastrophic adverse effects on organizational operations. Okay. So you times that by that, and that will give you your, all right, overall risk score. Okay. The risk values. This is how you grade it out. All right. You get a 25. That's a moderate risk. If you're in the 80, 100, 80, 100, you need to take care of that ASAP, because something is going on that you're very, very not compliant on, and it's a very, very big risk. Ransomware or something like that. Okay. You giving out admin privileges to everybody. Okay. Something like that. Okay. That would be a high risk. All right. Then you got your threat list. All right. So these are the threats. So if you go back to my compliance audit right here. All right. So when you click on a threat, see, if the control is in place, guys, it's no threat. So it's no need for you to do a threat assessment, to do a risk assessment on a control that's in place, guys. It's no threat. Okay. They're complying with that. So if you click down right here, okay, these are my threat lists. Data modification. These are things that can possibly happen, okay, if you if that control is not in place. So for this session right here, okay, require the use of system accounts with access to organization defined security functions or security relevant information. Use non-privileged accounts or roles. Okay, remember we talked about that. That control is not in place. All right. Admin users always have access to admin privileges, so they're not switching back and forth. All right. What is the threat of that? Unauthorized changes to systems. Okay. Vulnerability description. Certain users could possibly destroy critical data at any time. Okay. It's only 5 employees on the IT team, so that's how they're saying they're mitigating it. All right. So it's very not likely that something like that is going to happen. It can, but it's not likely. All right. So the likelihood, this is where you got to be a GRC analyst, guys. This is where you have to decide what the likelihood and the impact of it is. Okay. All right. So a 5 is error, accident, or act of nature. Hold on, nah. So that one was, error, accident, or act of nature is somewhat likely to occur or occurs between 1 to 10 times a year. So an admin team, IT team, guys, they should be pretty security conscious. But it's a possibility that one of them can knock out something that they don't need to be knocking out. Okay? If they're doing that, that's a risk. Maybe 1 to 10 times a year, maybe that it can happen. I wouldn't give it a severe grade, so I gave it a 5. Okay? Right here, the impact of that. What is the impact of that? The impact of that can be catastrophic. All right, but I didn't give it a 10. What did I give it? I gave it a 5. The threat could be expected to have serious adverse effects on organizational operations, organizational assets, individuals, or other organizations. Okay? So, because the IT team is tech savvy and know what they got going on, that's why I gave it a 5, because 5 people on the IT team, between the 5 of them, they should at least understand what's going on to the point where they don't mess something up. Okay? So it's a 5. So what was that? All right. So the overall risk 5 times 5 is 25. All right. They're going to accept that risk. Risk is being accepted due to the fact that there's a limited amount of users with these permissions. Okay. Really, what I have to put right here, guys, is why I feel like this risk is bad, and try to give them a sense of urgency to get it fixed. So this risk can possibly severely damage internal business operations. Okay. The risk can possibly severely damage internal business operations. Well, business operations as a whole. All right. So, the next one. Yes, authorized network access must be established to access privileged commands. That was in place. Remember from the interview. Yes, we separate our HR, finance, and IT teams network separate from the rest of our organization for security reasons. For security reasons with Azure VMs. So remember I said they were separating their HR department from the rest of their departments. Okay. Let me do something real quick. Sorry. All right, there we go. So that was in place. They're separating the different type of teams on their network. Okay. We ensure admin are privileged users are restricted to specific roles with permissions and role assignments in Azure AD for that specific user. All right, role-based access control. All right, if you know about Azure AD, you should know about role-based access control. Only users with that role can perform that action. That's in place. Okay. Yes, we prohibit privileged access to non-organizational users using business to business. That was in place. They said that they checked privilege. They said they checked privileges of users, but when we checked 5 random ones, one had admin privileges from a recent employment change. So that's a risk. It's partially in place because 4 of them that we observed had it. The only one of them didn't. So that's, what's the threat? Unauthorized access. Okay. The vulnerability description. Okay. Some users may have access. To information they do not need. Okay? Some users may have access to information they do not need. Unauthorized access, guys. We're talking about least privilege here. Most of the, threats from a least privilege session of the audit is going to deal with unauthorized access. Okay? Mitigate. How are they mitigating that? All right. How are they mitigating that? So, apparently they're not. Okay. Not mitigated. They don't have nothing in place on paper. They didn't tell me anything. They said they have checked privilege. They said they checked privileges of the users, but when we checked 5 random ones, no, they did not. So it's not mitigated. Even though some of them did. Okay. Let's put that right there. So what is the likelihood that will happen? So if 1 out of 5, what's that? What's the percentage of 1 of 5? That's what, like 15%? Okay. So I'll say the likelihood of that happening is really low. So I'm going to give that a 2. Okay, because it looked like they were, compliant with it, but you would have to do a further assessment of the things on their network to figure that out. All right, what is the impact if something like that was to happen? All right, I'm gonna give that a 5 also. Okay, the impact values, a 5 would be. The threat event could be expected to have a serious adverse effect on organizational operation, organizational access, individuals, other organizations, or the nation. A serious adverse effect means that, for example, the threat might cause a significant degradation in mission capability to the extent and duration that the organization is able to perform its primary functions, but the effectiveness of the function is significantly reduced. Okay? So if you got somebody with HR credentials, and they go in there and looking at everybody's social security number, okay, they can disrupt what people got going on the HR side, okay? Because you don't know if that person can edit that information and they don't know what they're doing. They clicking around, mess around, delete something. They can mess HR up, so that's a risk, okay? So 2 times 5, what's that? So the overall risk is a 10. This is gonna be partially in place. Okay. So there we go. Now we got 3 more. Okay. Yes, normal users must have access from the IT team to log in as admin to download software for admin privileges. That's in place. IT manager showed me. Okay, let's fix that typo. Their Azure AD user audit logs. That's what this control is asking about, logs. They do that. That's in place. And non-privileged users can only execute functions for their role. Admin functions are only for admins. Okay, that's in place. All right. So these are my 2 risks right here. All right, from this session of the audit. All right. So how would I how would I present this to a organization that they need to fix these? We did our compliance audit. We did our risk assessment. Okay. So I'm going to type up a little something. Okay. Those are my answers. Remember, I generated answers from GPT-4. All right. I'm going to just do something quick. To whom it may concern, your organization was not compliant with the following Nist 853 controls. Okay. What controls? All right, what controls were they? All right, let's go back. So it's going to be, let's highlight these. All right. So yeah, we got these highlighted now, guys. All right. The two controls that they weren't compliant with, we highlighted those. All right. AC-62 and AC-66. Okay. As you can see in my Word document, this is what I got typed up. Your organization was not compliant with the following Nist 850 controller, AC-6 and AC-66. All right, the following controls deal with least privileges. Control access to resources is important for business to continue. Added least privileges must be implemented to have a security sound organization. All right, so guys, you would go way more in depth with this. All right, in the real, and when you're trying to present this to your business, okay. But this is just an example, all right, of something that you would have to type up, okay. So I got my compliance audit. Y'all saw that. Y'all saw my risk assessment. Okay. Saw my little statement that I typed up. So I appreciate you watching, guys. And I hope you return back for more of my videos. Have a good one.